Hey, I'm Dr. Sean Price, Clinical Coordinator here at Cairo Spa in Fort Walton Beach. This is video number 2 in a video series on stress and how stress can cause hormone imbalances. Remember we talked about the hypothalamus in video number 1, and there's an important factor to understand. The hypothalamus has what we call the HP axis. It's the hypothalamic pituitary axis. What that means is the hypothalamus will send a message to the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland sends a message to either the thyroid gland, the ovaries, the adrenals, the testes, or the liver. So that pathway is what's called the HP axis, and then depending on what the end tissue is, that's where that second part or the third part of that axis comes in. So the hypothalamus releases two types of signals. It releases a releasing signal. In other words, it's a signal that is telling the pituitary gland to tell some downstream gland to increase production of some hormone, or it releases an inhibitory signal. In other words, it's trying to stop the production. Okay, so those are the two signals that the hypothalamus will send to the pituitary gland. Now, the pituitary gland is what we call the master control gland of the endocrine system, and the reason for that is your pituitary gland is then going to take the signal from the hypothalamus, and it's going to send that signal to whatever the gland is. So for example, if it's the adrenal glands, if we're looking at a stress response, the pituitary gland will send a signal to the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands will release epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, hormones along this nature, so that the body gets ready for that fight or flight response. So it's the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So that signal gets to the adrenal glands, and the adrenal glands releases these hormones into the body, and the body gets ready for this fight or flight response. Okay, so that's the way it's supposed to happen. Now, what happens when the adrenal gland releases its hormones, one of those which is cortisol? Well, the beauty of that is cortisol is inhibitory, or it starts to shut down. It signals to the hypothalamus and it signals to the pituitary gland, hey, we've got plenty of what we need, don't send any more. So it's called an inhibitory feedback loop, or a negative feedback loop. Basically, you get what you need, the signal goes back and tells the hypothalamus and the pituitary not to make any more. Okay, so that's the way that this is supposed to happen. So then once you have that physical situation that comes up and you get your physical response or your emotional response or whatever it is, and you burn off the hormones, because of this inhibitory response, you don't have excess. So you burn off those hormones, everything goes back to balance, and everything is fine. So that's the way the fight or flight response is supposed to work. Now, in our next video, we're going to talk about why it may not work this way. All right, so I'll see you on that video.